Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to Kottabos Space Program, where today we are having a look at yet another wonderful mod, this time in the form of Kartographer, which is being made by forum user Satnet, and what this glorious little plugin looks to add into the game is a selection of utilities to make things like time warp controls, focus selection, vessel selection, and maneuver node editing a lot easier for you, and also give you a lot more control over them. And, well, quite frankly, I love that. It's been kind of a pet peeve of mine in this game. It has gotten better over the various iterations of the game as it has moved forward, but still, the control that you have over, say, time warp or maneuver node editing, and even vessel selection, is not exactly where I would like it to be. It's not as fine-tuned as I would like it to be, and so when I saw this mod pop up on the forums recently, well, quite frankly, I had to take a look. So let's just jump right on into things by heading to the tracking station, which is where we can take a look at a couple of the features of this mod. Now, when you are in the tracking station, you have just two different options. If you go down to the Kartographer button here, now when we're actually in flight mode, so if we're flying one of these probes, we get a few additional options, and then also if we're in map mode, while in flight, we have a couple of more options. So that is quite nice that you have this available to you at different stages of the game. But here in the tracking station, we just have these two options here. The first being settings, which if we click that, we can click and drag around this little menu, and it shows us information about the mod, and then two different settings available to us at the moment. Which the first is the Auto Hide Utilities Launcher, which is turned on by default, but I've turned it off because, well, quite frankly, I don't like it. If it's clicked on, this little menu down here will disappear after a while. Now, some people would probably love that because it means they don't have to go back and manually turn it off, but for me, I like keeping it on because I'm constantly switching back and forth between the different options, so having it auto-hide constantly on me is kind of annoying. So we'll turn that off, and the second option is to disable Unleash the Kraken. Now, this is an interesting little feature that the mod has that, quite frankly, I have a lot of fun with. You may not, so if you don't like it, you can always disable it, but we'll take a look at it here momentarily when we are in flight. Now, the second option we have here for Kartographer is the Warp 2 command, which is quite lovely, and one of I'd say my second favorite feature in the game. My favorite one we'll look at last. But yes, the Warp 2 feature gives you a heck of a lot more control over your time warping. Now, when you're in the tracking station, the only control you have is just selecting different multiplication factors for time. So going from normal time to 50x, etc. That's all the control you have, which isn't exactly great. You just, watch your ship fly around and you try and stop it roughly where you want it. And of course, when you are in map mode, you do have the little option to right-click along the flight path of your craft and warp to that point, which is a convenient feature, I will admit, but I prefer this. It gives you complete and total fine-tuned control over your time warping. And how it works is we have our current time at the top, our Warp 2 time, which is currently, of course, identical because we're not warping to anything, and then the Delta time, which is how far into the future you want to time warp to. And it's glorious. And so what you do down here is you would have the way of selecting how far into the future you will time warp. So the top row that we have here, well, technically the second from the top, is your addition. So you add 10 minutes to it, to add an hour, etc., and then the row below it is the subtracting. So if you don't want 2 hours and 20 minutes, you can subtract, say, a couple of 10-minute increments from it, however you like. And then below that, we have a selection to basically default it down to 10 minutes, which is nice and convenient if you've screwed things up. Like, screw it, just go back to 10 minutes, it's easy. And you can change these values that are in here by either making it more fine-tuned all the way down to 0.01 of a second, or make it more coarse all the way up to 10 years from now, which is pretty far to time warp. But yes, say we want to go ahead a couple of hours. So we want to time warp to exactly 1 day, 9 minutes, and however many seconds in the future. We have that set, and all we need to do is hit engage, and it will automatically set the time warp to go all the way up to speed, and it will count down that time until we reach 0, and once we reach 0, it will automatically stop at exactly the right point, and I'm just realizing I probably shouldn't have done it for quite as much time as I did, but oh well, we're almost down to 0. There we go, it lowers time warp and stops us at exactly the 0 delta time, and tells us there just moments ago that time warp is complete. It's a very useful feature. It gives you absolute fine-tuned control over the time warp, which I just love. Now, one slightly unnerving thing that you've probably noticed while I've been playing around in here, whenever you go into this menu, it grays out all of this. I don't know why it does that, and it's kind of unnerving. When I was playing around with this earlier, learning everything, it kind of freaked me out. I was like, wait, what's going on? But yes, that's just a weird little glitch that it does. But let's close that and select this high orbit probe here and go to fly it, where we can then look at another wonderful little option. Now you can see here I already have set up a navigation node for this particular craft, which is convenient because if we go to this button for Kartographer and go back to the Warp 2, you'll see that we now also have an additional Warp 2 selection, so we can still change the time that we want to warp to. Or, since we have a maneuver node, it automatically detects that maneuver node, and it makes it so that we can warp to T-minus 1 minute, T-minus 10 minutes, T-minus 1 hour, T-minus a day, or, you know, plus or negative an orbit away from it, which is kind of crazy. I guess maybe if you're waiting for just the right window of opportunity, perhaps you'd want a couple of orbits. But yes, you have all of those available to warp ahead time, which is quite nice and convenient. Let's turn that off, though, and turn off Warp 2, and go to our new button that we have, which is Vessel Select. And this is quite a nice little feature, as it will list every ship that is available for you to select in the solar system. And you can also turn on asteroids and debris if you have any floating around in space. So it's quite convenient, so you can find exactly what you need, and you can either target it or switch to it. So if we actually go and switch to this low orbit probe, for instance, we can go to this, and we're now at this lovely low orbit probe, which has seen better days because, well, I was testing out the next feature we're going to look at, the Unleash the Kraken. Now, once you've switched to a craft or targeted a craft, you can also untarget things here, which we can do just to show off real quick. And then the last button we have is Unleash the Kraken. And if you click this button, it will tell you down here that unleashing the Kraken will destroy the active vessel, which isn't quite true. I'll talk about that more in a second. And that if we click the button again, it will explode. Now, it will explode, but it won't quite destroy the vessel, at least not at first. Once we click this, it explodes, but it doesn't destroy the whole vessel. It explodes a random piece from the vessel. So we lost one of our RTGs on the side, and then it's going to blow up another thing. I think we lost a battery. Yes, we lost a battery. And it's going to keep exploding things until it is destroyed, which may seem like an odd feature, but it's actually, I really like it because it's a fun way to get rid of your debris that you have in orbit. Sure, you could just let the debris burn up in the atmosphere or something along those lines, but what's the fun in that? Unleash the Kraken and blow it to smithereens. It's far more entertaining. And yeah, other than that, it's kind of a weird feature, which is why in the settings you can disable it if you so desire. But again, come on, who doesn't like explosions? It's Kerbal Space Program. So yes, you can do that, and eventually it should, actually the next explosion should completely destroy the vessel. But if you do switch to another vessel, it does stop the Kraken explosions. But if we wait momentarily, we should. There we go, it is now gone. And our low orbit probe is destroyed. So let's go to our Eve probe now, which we can, of course, switch to lovingly. Oh. Why did it switch to an unknown object? Well, that's new. That has not happened to me before in this mod. Interesting. Let's switch to the Eve probe. Try that again. There we are. I don't know what just happened. It switched us to an asteroid. Okay, so I found a bug, and that is also the first time I have found said bug in the game, so take that as you will. The mod is in currently version 0.1.0, so there's probably a few bugs to work out here and there. But yes, now that we are on this Eve probe, if we go to the map view, we can have two last glorious options. Now, we've looked at the settings, we've looked at the Warp 2, and we've looked at Vessel Select, but now that we're in the map mode, we have Focus Select, which is very, very cool. Now, we can select our focus on our probe, or if we have any bodies that are on our current trajectory, which since we're in orbit of Eve, is only Eve. If you have any other celestial bodies that are along the way of your trajectory, they'll show up here as well, but we can select our focus on Eve, which is quite convenient, or going back to the Eve probe. And that's not all we can do from here. We can list other celestial bodies, like say the sun, for instance. We can click and focus on that. Oh god, it's so bright. Let's go back to the Eve probe. And if you don't want to select on the sun, you can click this plus sign next to the sun, and it's basically a nested selection system in here where we can then select a planet, we can focus on Moho or back to Eve, hit this plus sign by Eve, and hit Gili, and we'll focus on that. Now, of course, we are, got to zoom in a bit there. There we go. Excellent. It is a lovely and tiny Gili there, and it's quite convenient. You can move around the map very easily by just selecting these buttons and going to exactly the place you want to go. And that's not all you can do. You also have this target mode button here, so if we click this and then click Gili, Gili's now our target. And you can see here, we can change our focus to Gili from this. It gets added to our target list, and we can click that to focus on it, though we're already focused on it, so that's pointless. And yeah, so it makes an easy way to select a target to be a celestial body. Vessel Select was an easy way to target other probes out in the solar system or other crafts, and this Focus Select is an easy way of targeting celestial bodies. It's very good, very convenient. It'll really help you out with getting your maneuver nodes, etc. set out and, finding exactly where you need to be going. A very cool, very lovely little feature. But let's close these, because that's really all we can talk about with that, and go to the last feature, which is by far my favorite feature, and that's the maneuver node editor. Oh, it's wonderful. Also, let's actually select back on the probe, zoom in, there we go, and we have the maneuver node editor. Now, normally in the game, you just kind of click on a maneuver node and add it here, and then you painstakingly mess around with these blasted things until you get exactly where you need it to be, which when this feature first came out, it was a godsend. It was so wonderful to have this. But as time has gone on, it's kind of become a very finicky system. It's not ideal. It's useful, and it is a lovely system, and thank all of the various Kerbal gods that they did bring this into the game, but it just doesn't offer the control that really you'd want, especially the further out you try to fly, because maneuvers become very, very finicky as you're trying to pull these different things out, and you're constantly going back and forth and adjusting everything in painstaking detail, and it's kind of a pain. But now with this lovely maneuver editor, actually if we create another new node again, we have complete fine-tuned control over exactly what we're doing. And that is just beautiful. Now let's go over all the things in order here. Now at the top, it's quite convenient. We do have additional warping options, so if you don't want to have to go back to this Warp 2 menu, you do have those options here as well, so we can, warp ahead 10 minutes or warp to our maneuver node T-1 minute, 10 minutes, or an hour. It's very convenient, and if we have multiple maneuver nodes. We can switch back and forth between them with these buttons here, which is quite nice, and again, a very convenient thing. Let's delete all of those. Beautiful. And create another new one. And now, the next part down here is the Delta V. And this is why I love this maneuver node editor here, because you can select either all the way down to 0.01 meters per second, all the way up to 1,000 meters per second, and then click on these plus or minus buttons down here to add or subtract that amount of delta V. So right now we're adding 1,000 meters per second. Now it's at 2,000 meters per second. You can see it right there. And we can then change it to 100 meters and subtract a bit, so we're now down to 1,500 meters per second. And you can do that on the prograde, the normal, and the radial lines. And if you so desire, set it back to 0 with this column here. This will zero out each of these numbers. So it gives you beautiful fine-tuned control, which, especially this 0.01 meters per second, is so important the further out you go, because that tiny little adjustment could mean thousands of miles off from your destination. So it's very, very cool here. And, well, just quite frankly, lovely. The next part down here is the time controls, which is how far away the maneuver node is from you. Now, whenever, let's delete this one again, we create a new node, it creates it T-minus 10 minutes away from us. Now, we can increase that by another 10 minutes by hitting that there, another 10 minutes, subtract 10 minutes, just like you could in the warp controls over here. You can add and subtract these various times all the way from, an additional orbit around or 10 orbits, etc., or bring it down to the default 10 minutes. And you can go more fine-tuned time and more coarse time all the way up to, again, 10 bloody years. It's a long time to wait for an orbit or a maneuver node, but hey, it works. Now, the fun thing about these, if we just kind of add in some interesting nodes there, we can save these nodes. So now that I have a 3,000 meter per second maneuver node at roughly 20 minutes away, we can store that node. And there we have it. So if we reset this node down back to 0, we could restore it by clicking that here. So say you're fine-tuning your controls and you realize, oh god, no, I've gone completely wrong. You can start back from whatever point you were closest to your target, and you can continue to store other different things in here. So you can save multiple different maneuver nodes, and it's wonderful. So you can basically test out different maneuvers or save ideal maneuvers. Like, I've actually found it quite useful to save, like, emergency maneuvers. So, like, if I go to restore one of these, it'll, have me, flipping around and burning hard, etc., which is quite useful. Now, of course, you still have to fly it yourself. It's not MechJeb, but it's a lovely feature that makes maneuver node editing a lot easier. And I love this restore function, especially for just trying to figure out a maneuver node that's going to take you way out into the universe somewhere. If you're off by a little bit, you can restore it back to where it was and go, okay, let's try this again. And it's just great. It gives you that additional fine-tuned control over how the game is played that I wish was in the game already. I wish it was just default in the Kerbal Space Program. But, oh well, the modding community comes through as it tends to, and gives us this lovely, lovely Kartographer mod that just makes life so much easier by giving you more fine-tuned controls over how you control the game. And that is just beautiful. So if you would like to give this mod a go for yourself, you can check it out in the link in the description as always. And I definitely say to go and give it a try. It will make your life so much easier. You will be happy, I promise. But yes, I hope you also have enjoyed this episode today, and of course that you come back for the next. But until then, thank you for watching, my friends, and as always, have a good one.